Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. And for those of you joining via recording, thanks for joining via recording. We'll be talking about platform engineering and infrastructure management. But first, I'll start with introducing myself. My name is Lucas Oberhuber. I'm co-founder and CTO at HipHops. And a little bit about HipHops. HipHops lets you automate your business processes fast. Create custom automations to suit your exact needs using our flexible config-driven automation studio. And now let me introduce our speakers. I felt like somebody dropped off there for one moment, but and now I've managed to lose sight of my little notes of your names. But so our first speaker, Rob Hirschfeld, Infrastructure Platform APIs, the IAC behind the easy button. Our second talk was Patrick Koch, or Koch, I would say in German. Yeah, that's right. Common cloud migration pain points and how to overcome them. Wolfgang Offner, Bring DevOps to the Swiss Alps. AJ Chakramath, apologies if I got that right. You say AJC, so that would have been, I should have just gone for the easy route. Unlocking Engineering Excellence, 10 Transformative Insights from a Platform-Powered Journey. And Adriana Villela, is that right? I hope I got it close. Empowering users through platform engineering, unleashing the potential of self-service tooling. Thanks very much. Now I'd like you each to briefly introduce yourselves. And we'll just go in that order. Rob, if you don't mind going first.
I would be happy to. Hello, my name is Rob Hirschfeld. I'm CEO and co-founder of RackN. We are an infrastructure automation company specializing actually in the bare metal infrastructure and operational tooling up. And as a software company, we actually help companies do the work themselves, which we're really proud of. One of the things, and this is worth noting, we have been doing some talks about infrastructure as code and infrastructure platforms to support platform engineering efforts. That actually led us to a talk, which is the one that we ran, which was a little bit different, called the Compliance Death Curve, where we've been exploring this idea about how challenging it is for platform engineering teams to actually create standards and promote those standards inside the organizations. And we've been seeing a lot of interest in that work, which is much more people process oriented than the tech of how to interact with some platform APIs. Both are important topics to our listeners here. So I'm happy to go either way.
Wrong talk. I listed out the wrong talk, didn't I?
That was a last minute substitution because we got very excited about this compliance death curve topic, and so we decided to run that one instead, and some things got lost in the works, I think.
Sorry, apologies for that.
No worries.
And therefore, my also prepared questions will be very, very. Could you try to explain something helpful? But thank you, Patrick. How about you? I hope I got your talk right, at least.
Sure. That's totally fine. So, hi there. My name is Patrick Koch. I'm a DevOps engineer working for AVL in Graz. So, for those who don't know, Graz, it's the second largest city in Austria. And my company, this business is, I'm just an employee, of course. The business is in the automotive industry. And most of the time, I'm dealing with cloud migration or trying to adopt cloud related aspects. And in general, I love to work with Azure infrastructure as code, especially Terraform. And I also try to be active in the tech community by doing blogs. And you can also you can also see me at some conferences. That's it from me, and I'm glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation, of course. Yeah.
Thank you, Patrick. Wolfgang?
Hello, everyone. My name is Wolfgang Ofner. I'm a freelance cloud and software architect based in Toronto, Canada. And I focus on Microsoft technologies. This means I have a .NET background. And these days, it's more Azure, Kubernetes, and DevOps. In the past, I lived all over the planet. I lived in Austria, Australia, and Switzerland. And also my talk was about the time I lived in Switzerland and a project I was involved. These days, I give a lot of trainings about Azure and Kubernetes. I try to speak at many conferences. I write on my blog, and I'm still working for a Swiss company, but remotely this time.
Nice. Let's see who's next. AJ.
Hey, thanks, Lucas, and nice to meet you all. I'm Ajay Chankramut. I am based out of Denver, Colorado, even though today I just happen to be upstate New York. But I work for a company called ThoughtWorks. If you haven't heard of ThoughtWorks, it's been a company that's been around for many, many years. Pretty much everything that we do within the space of DevOps, platform engineering, all those things originated in ThoughtWorks, right? I mean, it's continuous delivery, even the Accelerate book, Jessemble, all those people used to be here. You might have heard of Martin Fowler, who's our chief scientist. So what do I do here? I actually run the platform engineering space for all of North America, which is, of course, a really, really large space, which is what I'm really trying to do with my talk. I'm just trying to cram a lot of different ideas into one story that, which is a very representative story of a lot of the kind of transformations my team really try and help with. So glad to be here and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And Adriana.
Hey, my name is Adriana Villela. I am based out of Toronto, Canada as well, originally from Brazil, but been in Canada for a very long time. Currently work for ServiceNow Cloud Observability. You might have heard of it. It used to be called Lightstep. We are an observability company. I have been in tech for 20 plus years, got my start out as a Java software engineer for 16 years, got into the DevOps SRE space after that. And right now, observability is my passion. The talk that Ana Margarita Medina and I did, and unfortunately she couldn't be here today, but our talk is on platform engineering. And I mean, at the end of the day, observability is part of reliability, and platform engineering is all about, making not just improving developer experience, but also is about running reliable systems for your internal customers. So super excited to be here.
Thank you so much. All right, so I have a question for all of you, and hopefully we'll mix it up on who gets to answer first and so on. My question is there too much diversity in platform and infrastructure tooling globally in the world? Do we have too many options, and that's exacerbating a lot of our other issues? Adriana, do you want to start? Adriana, I should say. Sorry, I got that wrong. But
no
do you want to start us up?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I guess in some ways there probably are too many platform tools out there, but I think maybe it's because we haven't fully solved the problem yet. And so, we're trying to improve platform engineering as a whole, and various organizations are looking to kind of find that sweet spot, right? To really help our platform teams run more smoothly, and ultimately the folks that they serve, so that they can run more smoothly. I think ultimately we'll probably see the space whittle down as it's the survival of the fittest. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else has any similar thoughts.
If I may jump in, right? I mean, so I would actually have us take a step back, and which is what I tell all my clients. Look at it from a strategy point of view. Look at it as patterns point of view, right? And so once you look at it that way, it's a lot more easier to comprehend this plethora of tools that's out there, right? I mean, so once you do it that way, again, look at IAC. Yeah, there are some options, a bunch of options there, but sure, you can standardize on something. I'm not going to do a vendor promotion of any particular logos, but you know what I'm talking about. Similarly, if you are on AWS or some kind of public cloud, one of the things that you see there is that there is significant amount of confusion coming out of it. How do I do my container orchestration? How do I actually manage, have a runtime with my containers? There's 17, 18 different options or something like that, right? So so essentially, if you take a step back, look at it purely from a strategy point of view and say that this is what I want to do, and these are all the key steps within that SDLC where I need to actually fix those areas of friction. It becomes a lot more easier for you to do that comparison and say, okay, here are all the options available. This is how I can measure that. So how I get to that outcome.
So you feel like choice is valuable because you can sort through it, yeah?
Well, I believe so. I think at this point in time, it is extremely valuable. So anybody building an engineering platform today has got some orchestration capabilities and things like that coming up. But we do find that sometimes it's best for you to build your own orchestration components, right? As opposed to going and buying something. But depending on the maturity of your organization, right? If your organization does not have that kind of skill sets, there are amazing options out there which can help you with that. So yeah, I think at this point in that evolution, it's really good to have some of those options, but looking at it from a strategic point of view gives you better way into, better entry into that door and make the right decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would, I think that there's an interesting balance here. And there's two different types of questions. There's a lot of diversity in the market and a lot of options for companies to choose from. And then that has translated into individual enterprises or companies trying to use too many tools. And I think that there's a balance between diversity inside of an organization where you have to maintain different skills and integrate different pieces together, and having a market where there's a thriving ecosystem of different tools and different ideas and different ways to do things. I think if you look at what's going on right now with Broadcom, and I will call out a specific vendor because it's creating a lot of angst in the market, being overly dependent on one vendor is a problem. And so there is a value to companies to look at tool chains as a diverse set of components that they pull together in one way or another and not become overly dependent on one platform or one technology and tool. And it's a balancing act from that. I do think, and I'm often very critical about this, is that a lot of the tools are not built, sadly, to interact with other tools well. And so I think one of the big faults here is that we have a diversity of tools that each try to solve their problem in isolation. And the real value to the end user is when the tools work together in pipelines. And I really like that we're starting to talk more about pipelines. I don't think when we talk about platform engineering, we talk about the pipelines behind the platforms as much as I would like. We typically look at the platform as just a pane of glass where people click buttons, but every button click is actually a pipeline operation, or should be a pipeline operation. And when you look at it that way, the tools integrating together, the diversity of tools isn't as scary if they can integrate well with each other.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick or Wolfgang, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Please. Thanks, Wolfgang. Who should do it?
You go first.
Thanks, Wolfgang. What a gentleman. I would like to put the statements from AJ, hope I pronounced it correct, and from Rob as input. Totally agree with both of you, but to put it in a different way. So from my point of view, it's about defining the strategy. So for instance, I often get the question, why do you use Terraform instead of Azure Bicep? And then I just answer the question with the statement that, we just would like to be compatible to different cloud platforms in addition. And that's because we defined it as a strategy. We want to serve several ones. And the same can be, excuse me, compared with the example of Rob, getting all the stuff in a pipeline. So shall I stick to a platform, for instance, I don't know, GitHub Enterprise, and I take that specific feature, or I do it on my own and take care about the different tools which are available, and take care of on my own to get the licensing and all the different stuff. So that's just my humble opinion.
Nice.
I think it's great that we have many different tools nowadays because they try to improve what other tools didn't do well, so they all get better by the time. And I would think that nowadays we are in a state where you can just choose between several tools and they all get the job done. So you shouldn't focus too much on a specific tool. You should figure out what you want to do, then maybe evaluate 1, 2, 3 tools, and then pick one. And then also don't think in 1 year, oh, this one tool may be a little better. It's maybe one feature, but it doesn't change everything for you. Maybe in 5 years, when every tool evolved, then you can think if it's useful to change or not. Because what you have to think about is it's also the skills. If I select a new tool, for example, I've heard Terraform, it takes some time for the developers to learn Terraform, especially the more niche use cases. And if you switch, they have to not relearn everything, but it will take some time to get used to it. And also, if I'm a big company, I don't want to have 10 different tools. And if I switch team, I suddenly have to learn a whole tool set. So it's important to focus on only a handful.
So I'm hearing a really strong case for the diversity of tooling is extremely valuable, actually. It's just, keep the menagerie under control inside your own company is the key thing, right? And Rob, I believe you did speak about standardization and how, in fact, it can improve agility, especially in large enterprises and complex infrastructures. Can you elaborate a bit more about that?
I'd be happy to. This is one of the things that gives rise to the whole idea of the compliance death curve, is that as companies try to standardize on tooling sets or processes or templates or blueprints that they want more people to follow, a lot of the people who haven't been asked to follow those processes before will rebel. They'll feel like there is technical debt. There's work to do to conform to these blueprints, and they feel like they're being told what to do. They're very resistant to it because they see the toil and they see they see all of the pieces with that. The reality is, and we've seen this over and over again, is that when companies adopt good standard practices and policies and they put them in place and they make them available, especially with self-service portals, the agility of the teams that are using those platforms goes way up because they've been able to take toil off their plate. And I think what we forget about how much following standard practice and guidance allows teams to collaborate and hand off toil, what they would consider toil, maybe dealing with infrastructure, managing databases, installing observability, doing compliance and audit checks, right? All these things that are critically important for infrastructure operations to be successful and scalable are often seen as toil for application teams. And they don't appreciate necessarily how much work they absorb by not following the standard that allows another team to do their job and support them better. The ROI on it is remarkably high, and it's stunning to me how much companies resist, individual teams really resist these standardization efforts. And sadly, we watch standardization efforts fail over and over again, and the result isn't improvements. Actually, the result is often that people are stuck doing the things that they've been doing, and nobody's particularly happy at the end of the day. They just didn't lose the standardization battle in their favor, right? It's a very sad outcome for everybody.
What tricks, techniques, coercion, whatever have you used to get those teams over the line?
In some cases, and sometimes this has worked well and sometimes this hasn't. What we've done is we've compromised. This is actually, the simple answer is pipelines. The nuance, there's a little bit more nuance. The beauty of pipelines is that you can build a pipeline with just 2 collaborators and then add other teams. So what we see happen is that you can build a very small pipeline to get work improved. But if you've done it as a pipeline, then you can bring people on board. And so what we've done very successfully over and over again for different customers is you come in with a pipeline, you connect 2 departments or 3 departments together and get an end-to-end process. And sometimes there'll be manual processes. We've had to like take teams that are very solidly against integrating and then build pathways to those teams and then slowly pull them into the pipeline. But the pipeline's the key. It's what allows you to start building that integration together and connecting teams. If without it, it is entirely political will and technical debt. And that's a
like
very hard road. Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like there's an agile aspect of if you try to get everyone to standardize at once, then the pockets of resistance can overwhelm you. Is fair as well?
That's a good way to think about it. I usually think of Agile as a learning process. And so sometimes Agile can actually undermine standardization if teams are still trying to learn. So if you bring in blueprints and standardization when a team is in a learning phase, they will reject them. So you have to be able to respect teams in different phases. And a good platform engineering team will show up with useful standards and blueprints for the pieces that the teams are ready to standardize, perhaps a database infrastructure or a monitoring system, and then be available as teams become ready to standardize different parts of their offering.
Nice. Okay. Thank you very much. Patrick, moving over to you. Some of your team wanted to do a refactor at the beginning. And now that the cloud migration's happened, is the refactor off the table? Will it ever happen? Is it not necessary? Where are you with this?
It's a good question, and of course it is not. And I think also during my talk I mentioned that there is no wrong decision there to make. It's just about the specific circumstances, and in our situation it was at that time better to get the big picture first. But after the cloud migration and after proving that it works as expected, we are now doing the refactoring, and we are now preparing specific components to get a better performance running in the cloud. So it was just about the sequence according to that example. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Interesting. Wolfgang, moving over to you next. In your opinion, what are the biggest advantages and potential drawbacks of using Azure Arc for managing on-premise infrastructure compared to other methods?
So the biggest advantage is that you can use the tools you already use in Azure to your on-premise infrastructure. So you don't have to learn new tools or use 2 different tool sets. And what I said at the end of the talk, that you can also run Azure services on your Kubernetes cluster on-prem. This means, for example, machine learning or databases where you have lots of data which you don't want to give someone else, especially in the EU with the data protection laws. You don't have to worry that suddenly Microsoft, an American company, has access. So that's really powerful in my opinion. The problem with all the great tools is that they are complicated. And especially when I combine on-premise with the cloud, I have to learn everything from both worlds. So I have to learn how to use Azure. I have to know how to install and manage a Kubernetes cluster on-premise and everything in between, like firewalls, networking, DNS. So it's nothing you read about for an hour and then you get started. You have to have quite a broad IT knowledge.
Nice. AJ, can you explain how a platform-centric approach differs from a traditional approach to platform engineering?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm assuming that what you want to cover is more along the lines of how can a platform-centric approach to a modernization or a transformation, add that value. Ideally, the whole idea of platform engineering or building engineering platforms is to abstract out complexity, and try and make sure that how do you actually reduce that cognitive load of the developers, right? I mean, so I'm sure all of you are familiar with team topologies and concepts like that. That is the key. I mean, so anytime you're actually doing a large scale transformation, the biggest challenge that people find is like, are we adding more work for the developers? Are we actually increasing the complexity of everything? I think everything that we spoke about today, right? It's about like, how do you make sure that the amount of tools and the systems and the processes are simpler, and that's where really that platform centric approach will help, because you're abstracting out the complexity and putting that complexity in a place where you also don't have our traditional way of in our old ways of looking at DevOps as a team and DevOps as a set of people sitting around with knowledge of everything that is going on within the domain and the production readiness of your product and all that. Instead, build capabilities that are going to enable the teams to actually, the developers, to do things better. So what are the kind of things that we're talking about, right? Number one, making sure that there is that self-serve capability, enable the developers to do things faster without having to learn a lot more. And this is also, again, another theme of what our conversation today has been like, how do we actually keep up with all these advances that's happening? This is where the whole platform-centric, I mean, this is not a new idea, platform-centric ideas of composability and replaceability comes in. So all of us know about the loose coupling and the whole idea of tight cohesion kind of thing. So same concepts that we've been talking about for 30 years or 40 years comes into the platform side of things. How do you make the platforms loosely coupled, composable, so that it's easy for us to remove one of those components of that whole platform and replace it with that better one that you have? So that's where that orchestration comes in together. And that's why this whole transformation will be a lot more interesting and valuable.
Nice. Oh, thank you. That's really insightful. And Adriana, if I'm concerned about security implications of giving developers more access to the cloud infrastructure, how do you balance the self-service versus the security best practices?
I think this is
on that too. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think this is one of those cases where you need that collaboration with your security team, right? Because they can help drive what those policies look like. You need the collaboration with the security team, platform team, and the developers, right? Because the developers want that ease of use, right? The self-service aspect, because quite frankly, they're tired of waiting for requests to get fulfilled. But developers, we can go nuts and make things not secure, right? Because we just want to get things done and whatever. So we need those guardrails to rein us in. And platform teams have that responsibility to kind of save developers from themselves, but really working with the security folks to establish what those policies look like and then codify those policies really ends up helping to achieve that.
Nice. I do have an audience contributed question for Rob, and we are running a bit. I hope you guys don't mind if I go a few minutes later. But when automating within large regulated enterprises, it's likely any process step that you can automate will have been previously part of someone's remit. They're often loath to give that control up. How do you navigate that pushback?
We deal with a lot of heavily regulated industries. This is what you do is you don't try to take it out of their hands. What you want to do is you want to work with them to have a control process where they maintain control and ownership of what their components are. And so when you're looking at a pipeline, and this is I think what people miss about pipelines sometimes, and infrastructure as code. When it's done, some people will just take the tool like Terraform and say, oh, that's infrastructure as code, but it's really not what I consider infrastructure as code. It's immutability, it's dev, test, prod process, right? It's collaboration. It's those types of controls. And so when you're taking those processes, what we're actually doing is we're improving the control flow for somebody's ownership and responsibility. So in that pipeline, you have to have a way for all of the owners in the pipeline to add their piece, right? The pipeline has to be composable, going back to AJ's comment. so that when somebody says, "Oh, this is my remit in this component," they can own that section of the pipeline in an open, transparent way. They can get feedback that their code is operating in the correct way, and then they can have collaboration when they need to change it or do that work. The alternative for companies is actually much less tolerable, which is a lot of manual or incredibly loosely coupled processes. Loosely coupled to me means APIs where there are very clear boundaries between them. That creates loose coupling. A lot of companies, because of these strict boundaries, have created problems where teams are creating black boxes around their operations and saying, give me a ticket or a ServiceNow flow or something like that. I'm going to go inspect it, take a person, do that work. They might automate it internally, and then they send it back to the next person. What we're trying to do is bring that automation that they're doing into a pipeline and make it transparent, not take away ownership of it. Actually, taking away ownership is the last thing you want to do. But you have to have a place where people can do that work in a place where everybody in the pipeline can see it and where it gets exercised in a repeatable way. It's a little bit different mindset, but it's definitely not losing control, and it's never giving up ownership.
That's fascinating. Yeah, no, really interesting. I know we're a bit over time. Does anyone else have any other thoughts on what we've covered? Just no requirement. But if anyone wants to pipe up, please do.
I just wanted to chime in and mention something that ultimately, like platform engineering, the things that we're building, they have to be things that our users ultimately want, right? Because we might build this beautiful platform, but at the end of the day, if it's something that nobody cares to use, well, you've wasted everyone's time. So really, make sure, as with all things that we build, right, dial in, talk to who your end users are, and really understand what their needs and wants are at the end of the day.
Nice.
Yeah, plus one on that, right? So if you go back to my presentation, for those of you who haven't watched it, right, this whole idea of technical product management function. So if you ask me, what's the single most important thing within the platform engineering side of things, to me, it's that technical product management thing, which is what Adrian is talking about, right? Managing the backlogs and making sure that you build what somebody needs, as opposed to thinking that you would build and they would come. No, they won't come. So
Nice. All right. Well, I think we're done. Thank you so much, and sorry about the confusion there a little bit, Rob, but hopefully we got some really great insight from you, and all of you, and great talks. And appreciate you joining Automation Week, and thanks for you who have watched and those who will watch in the future. And that's all we have for today. So bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.